Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dana Bunnett. I'm Executive Director of Kids in Common. And as you heard, we're going to be recording this workshop today so it can be shared with folks that were not able to attend. And just want to make sure you all know that and feel good about that. You can, take off your screen if you do have concerns about being seen on video. Welcome. I just have to say that I'm so excited about this workshop today because children's savings accounts were something I became aware of a few years ago, and actually John Hogan, who's the person who coordinated this workshop today, made me come to San Francisco to learn about children's savings accounts in San Francisco. And since then, it's been on my bucket list of one of the things I want to see happen in Santa Clara County before I retire. So one more bucket list item close to retirement. Anyway, so I'm so happy you're all here. I'm going to hand this over to John Hogan, who is from Excite Credit Union and Excite Foundation, and who's been doing a lot of work in this field and put this whole workshop together. So welcome, John, and take it away.
There we go. Great. Thank you, Dana. And thanks everyone for logging on and joining us on this discussion as we talk about children's savings and what's happening nationally, statewide, and locally. When you look at this slide, you'll see a lot of the partners that have been involved in this. And I especially want to point out some of the early thinkers in this space, including Dana at Kids in Common and Manny Barbera and Dan Moser and Lisa Andrew, all with Silicon Valley Education Foundation and the Eastside Foundation. These folks really had the idea. When Excite began thinking about it, we got a welcome arms to try to create this program. I also want to thank Adrian McBride and Jody Pulliam from the San Jose Public Library and the Library Foundation for helping us run the Zoom show today. Our format here today, we're going to have three fairly brief presentations, kind of a national, a statewide, and a local presentation. And then we'll have some prepared questions for the panelists and roll into some questions from the audience. So that's kind of our plan today. You can begin putting questions in the chat anytime you'd like. Later, we will give you an opportunity to come off mute and ask questions if you'd like. I'm going to start with introducing our first speaker, Aaron Thiemann with Prosperity Now. Aaron's going to provide a high-level overview of children's savings research and the state of the field. And Aaron is a senior program manager on the ecosystem change team at Prosperity Now. And she provides technical assistance to partner organizations like ours and municipalities in designing children's savings programs around the country. And previously, Aaron was on the ground as a program manager in the city of St. Louis for their Office of Financial Empowerment program, which is one of the more successful children's savings programs in the country. So thank you for joining us, Aaron, and take it away.
Great. Thanks, John. And thanks for having me. We're really excited to talk about children's savings accounts and the great work that you guys are doing in Santa Clara. So on to the next slide, Adrian. So I just want to frame out what we're talking about as the challenge and why folks are interested in children's savings accounts or CSAs as a solution and why it might be a good fit for your community. So as you all know, many students feel like higher education is financially out of reach. And we know that more than 97% of college students from low-income families still have unmet financial needs after receiving financial aid. We've known this for decades, that financial aid and scholarships have not been enough to keep students from taking on student debt and from feeling like college is in reach. So on the next slide, we have a stat here. This is data from 2015 from Pell Institute. So we know that less than 1 in 10 young adults from low-income households will have a bachelor's degree by their mid-20s. And so on the next slide, we'll talk about what CSAs specifically can do. So CSAs focus on two potential solutions. First, they're raising kids' educational expectations, which I'll get into in a second. And the second thing that children's savings accounts help accomplish is they help enable families to build college savings, to start building that nest egg well before students are preparing to head off to college or post-secondary education at 18. So on the next slide, we're just going to talk through and level set on what CSAs are and what they look like at the national level. And then I'll turn it over to Julio to talk about some of the great work that's going on at the state level. So what is a CSA and how is it different from opening a savings account at your local credit union and saving on your own? So when we talk about CSAs, what we mean are long-term savings or investment accounts for children 0 to 18. Usually they're used for post-secondary education or another asset purchase. There are some CSA programs across the country that are focusing on home ownership or entrepreneurship, but what we're going to be talking today is about focusing on post-secondary. And when I say post-secondary, we mean the whole range of education beyond high school. So that includes traditional 2-year, 4-year colleges, trade school, vocational school, or any credentialed program. So they're not limited just to 4-year colleges. Something that makes CSAs different from saving on your own or saving in using a 529 or another savings vehicle is that when we talk about CSAs, we're talking about programs that provide incentives to build savings. Most commonly, these come in the form of seed deposits, so an initial deposit to get accounts started and help families save. And we also see a variety of incentives to encourage savings, including matches and other bonuses for making contributions. And one of the key distinctions that makes a CSA is that account withdrawals are restricted for that intended purpose. So this is different from your standard checking account. These are long-term savings. So usually account withdrawals are restricted until the participant is ready to use that for post-secondary. So on to the next slide. This is essentially how CSA programs work in case you're unfamiliar. So accounts are opened as early as birth or kindergarten. We see a lot of variety across the country. The accounts grow while the child is going through school and families are engaging with the account and usually with partners like your public library, school districts, or other nonprofit partners. And when students are ready, they make withdrawal requests from these accounts, and these savings help pay for post-secondary education. And one thing that I wanted to mention is that we know from research that children with a college savings account with less than $500 are 3 times more likely to enroll and 4 times more likely to graduate from college than those children without savings. And so what this means is data is coming from a national study that was looking at graduation and college enrollment rates from students that had savings set aside for college and those that did not. And so what we found is that starting savings early is really beneficial, especially for low and moderate income families, in helping make that college dream a reality. So on the next slide, we'll just, before I hand it over to Julio, I want to give you guys a sense of what the CSA field looks like across the country. You all have lots of great partners across the country in this work. There are now more than nearly 1 million children with CSAs, so 922,000 as of the end of last year. There's more than 100 programs across 36 states and DC. And there are, in addition to the work that Julio is going to talk about in a second, there are about a dozen local programs across California that are great resources as you are thinking about CSAs in Santa Clara, and have some great lessons learned, things that have worked and really resonated with families across California. And there's a great network of folks that can be supportive as we're getting this work off the ground. So I'm going to encourage everyone, if you have questions that I can be helpful in answering, if you want to hear specifics about some of the programs that we've worked with or some best practices across the field, please feel free to drop those in the chat. But we can go ahead and turn it over. John, I don't know if you want me to turn it back over to you to introduce Julio, but we'll send the slides out after. And if you want to go back really quickly, Adrian, on that last slide, there are, if you're interested in more information on our Prosperity Now website, which you can find a lot more information about CSAs, or if you want to look at some programs across the country, this website that's on this slide here too. If you're interested in getting updates and more information about CSAs, you can feel free to check that out after the webinar, but we can send the slides out after as well. So I'm going to turn it back to you, John.
Great, thank you so much, Erin. To you and the entire team at Prosperity Now, I got to tell you and the listeners that your website is a wealth of information, and it's really provided the guidepost for having us help develop the project that we've worked on locally. So thank you for that. Our next speaker is Julio Martinez, who's going to speak about the role the state of California is taking in the CSA field. Julio is the executive director of the Scholar Share Investment Board, a role he's held since January 2015. And he oversees the administration, direction, and promotion of California's Scholar Share 529 Savings Plan. Previously, Julio spent 14 years serving in legislative and public policy roles, including deputy controller for the state controller's office and chief of staff in the California state legislature. You all saw that we used the California program as the hook to reel you into this webinar or workshop. When I heard that the California was putting in $500, I had to reach out and learn more. So thank you, Julio.
Oh, thank you, John. And also thank you, Dana, for inviting me to be part of this great panel. And also thank you, panelists, for joining as well. It's a good time to be in California in the Children's Savings Account movement. Like Aaron said, California has been kind of a trailblazer for quite some time at the local level. I mean, we have over 12 CSA programs throughout the state, and the number is only growing. And we have some that we're in contact with that we know are going to be coming online sometime either at the end of this year or next year. So, and it's also wonderful to see the numbers, across the country too. And so going back to California and CalKids, if we can move to the next slide, please. This is just a quick summary of what I'm going to talk about. So CalKids is is like the acronym, but it really stands for the California Kids Investment and Development Savings Program, which was created by the state, by the legislature and the governor a couple of years ago in 2019 to expand access to higher education for kids, all kids born in the state of California. The program is being administered by the Scholar Share Investment Board, which I'm the executive director of, and this board oversees the state's 529 college savings plan, Scholar Share 529. And this program now, and I'll go into its kind of history, going back to the way it began, and then also how it was just expanded just recently. So we're looking at launch time, which is expected to be sometime in next June of 2022, we're looking at having every baby born in California having a CalKids account, seated with a minimum of $25. And then beyond that, just recently, the program was just expanded by the governor to include every 1st through 12th grader that is considered low income by definition, that are considered or labeled as low income by the local control funding formula. So we're talking about an additional 3.7 million kids that are going to be given a CalKids account. And so in year one, we're looking at maybe 4 million accounts established in year one. And so if you don't mind, if you can go on to the next slide, I'll kind of explain kind of the evolution of the program. And this is really exciting for us because we have been working with members of the legislature, in particular, Assembly Member Adrian Nazarian, who's been a champion of CSAs for the state as a statewide approach. And so he's been doing this and trying this for years. And it wasn't until 2019 that the legislature and the governor reached an agreement where we were going to support the initial version of the program, which was really just all newborns born in the state of California. And we were given, the design was, universal, regardless of income. And there was an opt-out program, meaning that every kid would have an account set up for them, and the parents would have to proactively opt them out of the program for whatever reason, right? And so we were excited, and we were given a $25 million one-time appropriation. And so while we spent the last 2 years trying to develop this program, and mind you, the data that we're going to get is coming from the Department of Public Health, and this program was just approved right before the pandemic hit. And so it took us a while to kind of really, work with the Department of Public Health because they had, of course, more pressing matters. But data became really kind of central to us and making sure we had the right data for all these newborns. And so we overcame that, and we were getting ready to launch at the end of this year, right? But then all of a sudden, the governor expanded the program, which was fantastic news. And like I mentioned, if you look at the expansion here, like I mentioned before, we're talking about every 1st through 12th grader that is considered low income will get a minimum of $500, right? And if those students also happen to be foster youth, they will get an additional $500. If they are identified as homeless pupils, they will get an additional $500. So really a maximum grant of $1,500 for some of these children. And so, you know, and the way this works is that the governor ended up giving us nearly $1.9 billion, and that's billion with a B, to support this effort. And 1.8 billion of it was from the American Rescue Plan funds, and 91 over a little, almost 92 million was from state general fund dollars. So that supports the 1st through 12th grade component. So this is where it gets a little confusing, and I'm going to try to kind of simplify it and hopefully explain it well. We have 2 elements to this program, right? So the program next year, when it launches, will still have a component where every newborn will have an account created for him or her, right? Every child going forward will have an account, seated with a minimum of $25. But the good thing is that in this budget, state budget that was approved this past summer, we also got an additional $16 million on top of the 25 that we already got one time. Now we're going to get 16 million ongoing, meaning that we get to offer at least $25 as a seed. But now we're going to offer additional incentives, and we're working on the incentive modeling because we want to make sure that we incentivize families to take action, whether it be participating in financial wellness programs, or just registering and actually engaging through our parent portal, or establishing their own scholarship 529 account and saving on their own as well. So we want to reward all those behaviors, and we're on the verge of approving a model, by our board, that we can hopefully sometime soon share on our website so that families can become aware of what's happening with a newborn component. Again, that's universal, opt out, every baby gets one. In year 1, every 1st through 12th low income student in a public school will get $500. And I mentioned the additional incentives for foster youth and homeless kids, right? So at some point there's going to be, from the onset, there's going to be a donut hole. 1-year-olds to kindergartners will not have an account in year 1. But every year moving forward, the donut hole will get smaller, so that by the time our first cohort of babies that are born in the first cohort hit first grade, if they're low income, based on the LCFF formula, they're going to get an additional $500 deposited into their account. So this is really fantastic news. We're looking at really, and then not only that, the general fund will replenish every incoming cohort of first graders with $170 million annually going forward. So we're looking at really having a program that is going to be great, and also the largest in the country, with, again, from year 1 having nearly 4 million children involved in this program. And so we're really excited, and that's the general overview of the program. And we also look forward to working with local CSA programs throughout the state to make sure that parents and their children leverage all of the resources available to them. And so we look forward to working with you and the other, we work very closely with the local CSA coalition in the state to make sure that we kind of collaborate on marketing and outreach, and that parents, they engage and take advantage of these great opportunities. And I'll stop there. I can, and then of course later on ask any questions, answer any questions that people may have.
Great. Thank you so much, Julio. Amazing. Amazing. And look forward to getting back to some questions. You've got a number of foster youth advocates on the call here, so I know they're going to be interested in that. Our third and final speaker today is Juan Cruz, Superintendent of the Franklin-McKinley School District since 2015.
Hi, this is John.
Juan has had the good fortune of serving and growing professionally in the Eastside Union High School District for 18 years and has been in San Jose for 24 years. So thank you, Juan. Love this picture. I can't wait for you to tell everybody where it came from.
Yes, thank you, John. And let me just start off by thanking Excite Credit Union and Excite Credit Union Foundation. for this opportunity to provide the college savings account to our students in Franklin-McKinley. This is a picture of a student last week when we launched the program at Meadows Elementary. And so we gathered all 78 first graders and talked to them about this new savings account that we're all getting. And I gave them some homework and I said, okay, when you go home, you need to talk to your parents about why you got that shirt. Why did you get, we gave them a $50 fake bill with their name in the back of it as homework for them to go home and talk to their parents about this new savings account that they had and that they were going to go to college. So I told the principal that I'll be back over there next week to check up and see how they did on their homework assignment. Next slide. For those of you that are not familiar with Franklin-McKinley, we are right at the heart of San Jose, and we serve about 6,500 students over 16 different schools, PK through 8th grade. As you can see, many of them qualify for free and reduced, and those that don't qualify, obviously because of the federal standards and all that, are considered to be socioeconomically disadvantaged anyway. So I would say 100% fall under that category, but this is the from the federal guidelines that we have. We say we're diverse, but we really are. You're either a Latino student or a Vietnamese student in our school district, with 96% of our students falling in those categories, but we have 43% of the students English learners. So we want to make sure that this is the community that we want to make sure that we promote, college in their future. Next slide. So this is a picture of that day. You can see the first graders are not as tall as we sometimes think about the students, and so we were excited to let them know, and they were excited to hear about the program. And you can see that our mission is really aligned to all of this, right? We want to make sure that our students are ready to access the college pathway that Eastside has laid out for the students, and that this is the pathway that we're setting them up as we hand them over to the high school setting. Next slide. So how does this partnership work? So as we have the students, right, we have the data, we have the parent information, and so we are providing all of that to Excite Credit Foundation for them to manage and the accounts and provide the portal for the parents to see their accounts and keeping track of their balances. And then the Excite Credit Union is actually the one that will be holding the funds and is a generous funder of the seed money as we get started. And then SVEF and Eastside Education Foundation, thought partners, and just helping us think about sort of the design of this, the how do we actually roll it out, and what were some of the things that we needed to be upfront planning for any barriers that might have been there as we rolled out the program. Next slide. So we have about 620 first graders that will have $50 as their seed deposit. Families are going to be able to match up to $25 for the first 2 years with a bonus 5% for the first 2 years. And like Julio just said, we're looking at what are the incentives that we can have that would add additional funds to the accounts, right? Participating in those activities that align with students being successful at school, getting into those areas where we know students will be successful in. So those are things that we're still going to be working on and finding, obviously, funding for it, right? Because that's the other piece. And all of this is obviously for them to be able to use for post-secondary education, like it was mentioned earlier. Next slide. So how are we going to measure success? right? We always want to look at it, what is the impact of all of this, and how are we making sure that we're successful with the program. Obviously we want to make sure that the families are not passive in this process, and that they're registering online to see their accounts, making additional deposits, and then attending the different financial literacy courses that we'll have. And so we rolled it out, and this year and next year we will enroll the next group of first graders. Next slide. So again, how does this sort of interconnect, right? So this is not a sort of a set aside program, something that is, not aligned or not, we wanted to make sure that we have this as an entire package from first grade, right? Because first graders, thinking about what it is to be in college, I mean, that's a long time. And so how do we keep them engaged, and how does this all, from the time that they were Franklin-McKinley, we're already talking about their college savings account. When they go to high school, we continue to talk to them about the Inspire and Eastside Promise, a great collaboration with San Jose State and the Eastside Alliance and Eastside Education Foundation, guaranteeing students that graduate from the Eastside high schools and that come from our feeder pattern, access to a guaranteed spot at San Jose State if they meet the minimum A through G requirements. And that, this is really about a pilot that I'm hoping to be successful, because obviously it impacts my families that I serve, but also by showing how successful it can be, being able to then move this initiative over to the other elementary school districts that feed into Eastside Union High School District as well. So again, this is, our launch of it. The kids are excited, the families are excited, the staff are excited. And, we hope that excitement, translate to action by all the entire community, to make sure that our students are being successful at school and life, and then setting up for the doors to be open for post secondary education.
Great. Thank you so much, Juan. So kind of moving ahead here, I'm going to put a few questions to the panelists. I've seen some questions coming into chat, so thank you. We'll be able to get to those soon. Also, if you use that raise hand function in Zoom, Jody, you'll see that, and we'll have an opportunity to call on you as well in a little bit. Aaron, I want to start with you. When I hear this, all the research about this $500 means that children are going to have a 4 times better, higher college graduation rate. I'm like, oh, come on, this is a little bit too good to be true. Can you tell us a little bit more about how the research came about, what it tells us, and maybe what the other factors are?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned earlier, that $500 equals 3 times more likely to enroll and 4 times more likely to graduate is based on a study of current college students, or at the time, current college students. And it's just based on whether or not they had savings for college. So as you know, the programs that have been discussed today have quite a long time horizon. So we have not yet seen the end of the first randomized controlled trial of children's savings accounts. So there is a trial going on right now, a test of a Csa program that was randomized at birth in Oklahoma. It's called Seed OK. So they've been following the Seed OK families from birth. I believe they're in 4th or 5th grade right now. And so what we have right now in the research on CSAs are interim effects. And what we see is that children with a CSA are more likely to have savings in their own name. So more likely to have opened a 529 account or opened a savings account, have been saving on their own once that partner organization has made that investment and helped start those accounts. We also see that there are lower, the Seed OK trial has found that it has positive effects on mental health of mothers. And so that's really exciting to see, right? And we think that that has something to do with thinking positively about your child's future and thinking about less stress when it comes to money. We know that these are small dollar accounts, right? These CSAs, $50, even $500 is not going to pay for college. It simply isn't, especially for kids that are in kindergarten right now and are going to be going to college, 15, 20 years from now. But what it is doing and what the research is showing is that it has a really positive effect on thinking about expectations for your child's future. So whether or not they can go to college and whether or not they see college as something for them. So is college for me? And having some dedicated savings really does make a difference on those things, even though it won't pay the full cost of tuition. It sets families up on a path to say, this is for me. This is something that I can do. It's going to be hard, but it's something that my community is invested in, and now the state is invested in. And so you have partners alongside you.
Yeah, wow, that's great. I mean, that's so important to build that mindset. And I know, we announced our program here on something called College Day, which is something that goes on throughout the community. And it starts for the kindergartners and the first graders. So this all just ties in nicely. Julio, when we heard that, the state was going to put $500 in all the accounts, and then we said, well, wait a minute, we're putting $50 in the account. Why are people going to work with us? Is the state program going to put local programs out of business? What are your thoughts on that? How do you think local and statewide programs might work together?
No, that's a great question, John. And, this program was designed to be universal and present in all 58 counties. And the reason is because you're right. I mean, there are a lot of a growing number of local CSA programs, but a lot of the local CSA programs in the state of California tend to be in urban centers, right? Los Angeles, Oakland, San Francisco, Silicon Valley, right? San Jose area, Santa Clara County. There are some that are growing outside. I mean, there's some in Sonoma County. There are some now. San Joaquin A+ is going to be a really huge program in San Joaquin County. So that is definitely very promising. But we still have the vast majority of counties. We have 58 in the state of California, and the vast majority do not have a CSA program present in their area, which means that our program is designed to be kind of like the central program that reaches all corners of the state and all children in the state. But we are designed to complement the efforts that are being made at the local level. And that is because, local programs are more effective in reaching families because they have relationships with families. We are a state agency, and so we have the infrastructure, right? So we can, when we have also the economies of scale. So we have an existing 529 program that's been around for 21 years, almost 22 years. So we have a marketing arm, we have an outreach arm, and we have relationships with school districts, employers, nonprofit organizations, right? So usually our approach to reaching families has always been leveraging these relationships and working through, organizations. And so we're going to continue doing that. But now, a couple of years ago, we launched our own CSA platform that when we integrated VistaShare Outcome Tracker into the Scholarship 529 program, that allowed local CSA programs that wanted to offer Scholarship 529 as part of the local CSA program to use our platform. And so what that means is that us as Scholarship 529, we hope we're still in the procurement process, so we're looking at VistaShare, and I think, just because it's already integrated, it's kind of almost like a slam dunk. But for those CSA programs that are on the local level that are using Outcome Tracker, it's going to be much easier for families to toggle back and forth and see their accounts all in one location, right? Now, there are a lot of programs that don't have, Outcome Tracker, but are thinking about it. And so we're encouraging, those programs to do that. But even if they're not, we're going to find ways to market the program because, collectively, as jointly, because we want to make sure that families do not get confused with the multiple programs that are out there. We want to make sure that we show a collective, organized front that we say, listen, if you live in County X and you have these 2 programs available, possibly even 3 programs available to you, be aware that you can just go to this portal or follow our website and follow the instructions on how to maximize and take advantage of all the programs that are available to you. Now, it might be cumbersome that they have to log into 2 different programs, but still, they'll be aware of it and hopefully they can take advantage of all the resources available to them.
Great, great. Thank you. I know the team that at Excite, and I think other community members that want to get involved. I mean, it's kind of our privilege, I think, to work with the school district and be able to teach families the benefits of a 529 account, right? If we get them excited with our local program and then say, oh, by the way, you also have $500 that's just come in or is coming, next summer. I think that's just an opportunity for us to do more education, which only will help, right? As they want to build the 529 route, maybe the ideal route for long-term building, but we need to educate them about it. So we look forward to that. Juan, I know it's super early with our program rollout, but I'm curious that, was there any early reaction from families or staff and ideas on how we might be working to engage the community?
Yes, when I sent the information to our staff in anticipation of the launch last week, we got really good feedback. In fact, many of our staff members, wanted is like, how can we, have other grade levels started? And I said, this is a pilot. We're getting started with first graders. If there's ability for us to expand that and there's funds, absolutely. But we're starting with this group specifically because they're the kindergartners that experienced school for the first time virtually. And this is our largest cohort of students as we look at our enrollment pattern. So we're going to maximize the number of students in a grade level by focusing on first grade. We're still, going around our schools. In fact, we have a parent meeting next Tuesday at one of our K-8 schools where we'll have an opportunity to in person talk to our parents about it and get some feedback from them. But at least from our staff, has been, well received, excited for our families and the opportunity for our students.
Great, great. Thank you. Julio, I brought up briefly about the foster care students, and we have some advocates on the lines. When I think about, and I've been active in supporting foster youth as well, so that's a fluid population in terms of there's a point in time when students are in foster care and then they go out of foster care. Is it clear yet how the state's going to manage that and define that, or is that something you're still working on?
No, good question. We are in the process of working with the Department of Education and the Department of Finance to actually get this data. We are under the impression that they are identified through the local control funding formula. So they have the ability to identify them. Where we know, and maybe John, if you have some time in the coming months, we are going to have to work with organizations that have reach into this population for the purposes of notifying them of these resources, right? And making sure that they claim these monies for themselves. And so, yes, I think identifying them will not be the difficult part, although we're still working on data for the entire universe of kids that we're going to try to, create accounts for, but also market to and reach. But yes, I think to answer your question directly about this population, I believe they have a method for identifying them.
Great, great. Well, I know we have some advocates here. We have the County Office of Education. We even have a judge on the line. So I'm going to be on this one like a dog on a bone, making sure that we identify as many students that deserve this fund. So I appreciate it, but we want to. That's a group that we know education is critical to them. So super happy that we're doing extra for them.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Judge Lucero. I think we're going to shift a little bit here and make sure we get some of the audience questions, et cetera. If people want to shift back to their gallery mode for viewing, feel free to do that. Jody, did you want to pull some questions, or should I continue with some of the ones that I had?
Well, I was going to say, John, there are quite a few in the chat. I can start off if you would like.
Great, yeah.
Okay, so the first question, I believe, is for Julio, and it's from Maya Lopez. And her question was, does the money in these accounts affect the family's income when applying for FAFSA or other financial aid?
Yeah, I'm unmuted. Great question. As a 529 plan, well, let me take a step back. These monies are going to be held, by the state and owned by the state. We're actually working on a method of distribution that would be hopefully treated as a scholarship and not as a 529 distribution. And the reason why we're doing that is because for a number of reasons. While at the very beginning of the program, when we actually enroll kids that are born in the state of California, just by virtue of being born in the state of California, they are documented, right? Now, there's a provision in there that allows us to opt in kids that are undocumented if funding should become available. At the moment, we don't have funding, so that program has not been triggered yet. That part of the program has not been triggered yet. Now, when you go to the 1st through 12th graders, you are going to have every low-income student, regardless of their status, right? And so we want to make sure that we're sensitive to that distribution and we don't cause a reportable event, taxable event. And so we are working on that for a number of reasons, and we're hoping to treat that as a scholarship. But to answer your question, because we're with respect to the account savings on behalf of the family, because one thing, like Aaron said, it's one thing to have the state or local program invest monies in children, right? That's only one component of it, and that alone is never enough to pay for the expenses of related to higher education, no matter what level you're at, because just the rate of inflation versus the rate of the cost of higher education is just incredible if you compare them. So the higher education tends to be 2 to 3 times the rate of inflation, always increasing sharply. And so we want to make sure that families save as much as they can during this period of time, right? So we encourage them to also open up a scholarship 529 account of their own. And of course, we want to reward that as well, right? But when they do that and they do save on their own, the wonderful thing about a 529 plan is that of all the savings vehicles that are available to families, the 529 plans in general, not just Scholarship 529, are the most financial aid friendly, because when you fill out the FAFSA, assets in a 529 plan are only counted at 5.64% as far as the estimated family contribution. Some other investment vehicles can cost the family up to 20 to 50%. And so when you think about a $10,000 savings account, that means that the family is going to have to just contribute maybe $564 more out of their pocket. So, but given the savings that you have, that just means that you're going to have to borrow less. And so regardless of the minimal impact that it'll have on families and their financial aid eligibility, we think that it's still worth saving because, I don't want to call them kids, but young adults graduating from higher ed are just graduating with way too much debt. And I think it costs, twice as much by some estimates to pay down student loan debt than proactively saving along with the earnings, being proactive and saving in advance. And so I hope that answers the question you asked.
Thank you, Julio. This next question, I believe, is for John, actually. So John, can you elaborate more about the plans to grow and scale this program in San Jose?
Yeah, thank you. That's really the critical element, right? We're just launching right now in Franklin-McKinley School District, but our goal and our vision is to expand this throughout the East Side Alliance, as Juan mentioned. So the Site Credit Union has provided the funding to really launch the Franklin-McKinley School District this year and next year, and hopefully beyond, assuming that we get the traction that we expect. But we'd like to add a second school district next year within the East Side Alliance, and then really add the other 5 school districts by the 3rd year. So to build all that up over time, and to enroll that would be 6,000 kids getting enrolled every year. That's going to take some additional funding opportunities and funding partners beyond the credit union. And, Erin could probably talk to this actually, and maybe she can after I stop, but most of the most successful programs around the country have a combination of government funding and private philanthropy funding. So we hope to be able to build on that in the next couple of years. Erin, do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I just want to confirm that what you said is correct. We see the most sustainable programs across the country have either a permanent source of state funding or have, for local programs, have a mix of some local funding, some philanthropic dollars, and some corporate support as well. So we love to see a healthy mix of funders, right? Especially for local programs.
Great, thank you. Go ahead, Jody, with any other questions?
Great. Juan, there's two questions for you, so two separate. So the first one is from Christina, and she wanted to know, will the state be considering the local cost of living when deciding who qualifies for $500?
Did you say one? I think that's more for Julio, because that's the...
Yeah, I think.
Apologies, Juan, then maybe that's for Julio.
And I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yes, Julio, we want to know, will the state consider the local cost of living when deciding who qualifies for $500?
Unfortunately, I don't think there's the ability to do that. It's going to be a flat $500 to every child, that's eligible, based on that, on the data that we're going to get from the Department of Education. I don't think we have the ability to adjust those dollars. And I mean, it's a great question, and we're trying to do that for other efforts that we're working on, other initiatives. But for this one, it's the flat $500.
Okay, and then Julio, in follow-up to that, from Christina Pistoni, she wanted to know, to clarify, the $500 is a one-time payment for 1st through 12th graders in 2021. And then are these, if students aren't low income in 2021, but later on they move into foster care or become homeless in later years, will they get an extra $500 then at that time?
We're still working on that because we're trying to see, what kind of data we're going to get from the Department of Education. But this data is collected by the Department of Education annually on what they call Census Day data. And I think those folks in the education space on this call probably understand that better than I do. So they do take a snapshot and they provide this data, I think, once a year. At this moment in time, I'm not sure if we're going to have the capacity to update list and modify, who's been either, for whatever life circumstances that either allowed them, force them to become either homeless or foster youth, and then adjust those accounts. I don't think it's going to be capable. So I think every year, for example, in year one, we're going to take a snapshot of the entire student population, 1st through 12th. And I think once that snapshot is taken, I think those awards will be given. And then we're going to do that all over again, but for every incoming cohort of first year students in 1st grade, we're going to do that again. And I really don't think that we're going to have the ability to modify that, only because from a budgeting standpoint, it's going to be very difficult, but two, from a pragmatic standpoint, I think it's going to be very challenging to do that. And so I'm not ruling it out completely, but I see it as very, very difficult. And we're still in the process of, working with the Department of Education to kind of, because mind you, there's also another challenge too, right? What's going to happen is we're getting Department of Public Health data for the newborns, right? And that information really, they extract it from a birth certificate. So that information is collected right when the babies are born at the hospital. So that, so they know very little. And so we're going to have that information, and they're going to be, moving on through the educational system. When they get to 1st grade, we're going to have the LCFF data. Now, the other trick is, how do you match them up, right? And so that's another hurdle that we're kind of overcoming. That's probably more information you needed to know. But I'm saying that because it's going to be tricky, and we're trying to figure all this out. And I think At the end of the day, I think simplicity may win, and this program may not be as dynamic as we want it to be, because circumstances will change, right? As a kid kind of grows up, and it could be for worse or for better, but we're not going to be able to know. And I think simplicity at the end of the day will probably win.
Right. Yeah, thank you, Julio. I think that's why, again, the importance of bringing this information to the community. So now we know what you're working on and what some of the potential hurdles are going to be. People can be looking out and advocating for their families. There's a question I see in the chat that I want to make sure we get to. It's from Maya Lopez. Says, I work with a lot of kids whose parents don't have bank accounts. Are you going to work with parents to show them how the bank system works? And I think that's so important, right? We're starting here with Juan passing out fake $50 bills to children, but giving them a homework assignment, which talk to their parents, right? At the end of the day, even as Aaron described, we want to tell the children they're going to college, but we want their parents to be confident that the children are going to go to college. And so the answer, Maya, is yes. A huge part of this and a measurement of success is parent engagement. When parents reach out and start asking us how the program works, how can they take advantage of it? How can they afford college? That's when we can really begin to build what we call a savings culture, a college savings culture in our community. So we really look forward to that. One of the other questions that we've received.
Could I add one thing, John, before you move on? Yeah, I was just going to share, we've worked with a lot of CSA programs that work with the credit union and have had a lot of success in that whole family engagement piece. And so we've seen programs, and this is true in St. Louis, and a lot of programs that work with credit unions, is there's a lot of value in making a program feel real and feel tangible. And so there are a lot of programs that have had a lot of success in hosting events at the credit union. Of course, this is pre-COVID, so taking those precautions, of course, under consideration. But we've seen a lot of success and just a lot of joy at family events and working with credit union partners. And often we see that families who maybe had been reluctant to save, when we speak to them at a credit union event, they were saying, I want to start saving for my 5-year-old, but I also have an 8-year-old at home who, this program started before they were in kindergarten. And I'm sure this is something that has come up in thinking about the school district planning. So being able to talk through, what are your options to save for other children in your family? What are options to open a checking or savings account for yourself? And it can be a little bit less intimidating once you already have a relationship with that credit union, and by way of that local partner can feel a little bit more trusting. So it can be a scary experience, right? If you've never walked into a bank or credit union before. But if if you have trust in the school district or a community partner, it can be a great entryway to build that credibility with families. So I just want to encourage, as it's safe and as life is getting back to more in-person events, we've seen a lot of really successful in-person whole family events where the whole family is invited regardless of how many kids they have enrolled in the program.
Great, thank you, Aaron. Yeah, I think that we've touched on it, but I want to make sure everybody understands kind of the magic of these programs is the automatic enrollment, where families have the chance to opt out. But it starts out with they're already enrolled and their students already have $50, and they can't opt out. But what automatic enrollment does, a couple things. First, in answer to V's question, yes, students are enrolled whether or not they're documented families. They're automatically enrolled in these programs, and that's where it's important to have like a nonprofit intermediary, because they don't have to meet the exact banking requirements, for example. So I think that that's a really important element in the inclusivity of these programs. I think, I see that time is about up. I guess what I wanted to say that how we're going to proceed, there's way more questions in chat than we've been able to answer. We'll capture them and we'll work on getting answers out. And we'll call on our experts as we need your help for some of those answers as well. and if we can, maybe I think we can put together a document that we can post on the Excite Foundation website or something that might be Q&A. We will have the recording available. We'll get that posted up on the website and send it out to people who participated today. And then of course you can share it with as many folks as you'd like. But with time winding down, I think I better say thank you to everybody and really look back to hand it back to Dana to wrap us up. So thank you everybody for attending, and thank you so much to our panelists. I do want you to know this is an international conference because Aaron is in Canada, so thank you.
Great. Again, this is just so exciting to me, and I just think the opportunity to expand that, I just believe in the data that says that aspiration to go to college gets planted so early, and when we build on that, this program does that. So thank you, John. Thank you, Julio. Thank you, Juan. Thank you, Aaron, for all your work on this and for being here today to share this information. We will be back. We will make sure you know about all those things being posted, and hope we'll see you again sometime soon. Happy Thanksgiving in case we don't. Be well, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks again.